And I want to make no bones about it. When we decided to build this motorcycle, we did not decide to build an exotic alternative to also be in Superbike, but we decided deliberately to build a motorcycle which is mainstream and take the 4 existing Japanese manufacturers head on.
How can the most powerful leader bike ever built be the most rideable? And in regards to rideability, that comes from the electronic aids. I mean, there's so many aids through the mapping, the 4 modes, rain, sport, race, and slick mode. That's the throttle response and how the output is being regulated out the output shaft. But then you have DTC to back it up. It's going to allow them not to multitask as much. They're not going to grab the handlebars with half the pressure. They're just, you know, their rears aren't going to be eating the seat as much because they can feel instantly when they engage the drive line in rain mode and you hit the throttle to here, it takes its time catching up to that throttle position, so it allows you to focus on what's ahead of you because there's not so much geometry change and everything happening underneath you to where you have to just tense up a little too much. But from rain mode, you can go up to sport mode. And in sport mode, it gives you that initial throttle just forgiveness on that initial throttle pickup to where it's seamless. There's no light switch. And it's not all sham wow, you know. It is truly the most amazing feeling because so many folks feel like a pro. And from there, it is the traditional 181 rear wheel horsepower map in sport mode and on up the next 2 modes. But to me, the heart and soul of this bike, and each rider likes to prioritize what they think is most interesting about the bike. The bike's built for performance. So when you're performance riding on this bike, whether hopefully not on the street too fast, track days or racing, it has a lean angle sensor that's really not as highly spoke of because it is just the next generation of wow. You just have to shut one eye and trust it. In the beginning, when somebody says, right at the apex, lowest part, the smallest part of the tire, lowest part of the corner, smash it. Wide open, just hit it right to the stop. And nobody wants to, you know, trust me. Even myself, I almost had to shut both eyes. Rain mode, instantly, again, you feel how mute and tame the 150 crank horsepower map is. And even 150 horsepower, you can get yourself hurt. But it is so tame and so mute that you can enjoy the chassis and the brakes. You can learn how to ride the bike without worrying about all that power. And as you dial up the modes, in rain mode, it's actually 38 degrees is the predetermined lean angle before the DTC, the dynamic traction control. I don't even like to use the word kick in. It doesn't kick in because it sounds abrupt. It's so non-intrusive that, again, you're looking forward, you're focusing. As soon as you feel some sort of geometry or anything intrusive that kicks in, right away, even for a millisecond, it takes your mind off of what you're looking at up the road or up the track. Sport mode, 45 degree of lean angle, 48 degrees in race mode, and 53 degrees in slick mode. So what that means is, if you can picture yourself coming off of a second gear right-hand corner, and we're talking a good 9,000 and up RPM in the meat of the band. As it starts to pull, if we're in race mode, and 48 degrees is the determined degree of lean for the DTC to be active, let's say we're at 49 degrees, you can keep it wide open, 3/4, whatever throttle position you want, and you actually hear, and as you hear the DTC activate, it goes zip, 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 you know? You can see the light peripherally light up, but it doesn't slow you down. It doesn't retard the ignition to the point where it changes the geometry. So, you know, with 181 rear wheel horsepower, you got it almost wide open to the stop, but the bike's not spitting you off or doing anything but waiting for you to get above 48 degree lean. As soon as it hits 47 degrees, it starts to take off. So you can actually keep your body off the bike to keep it turning, a low center of gravity. You're standing the bike up to get it on the meat of the tire and drive off the corner, but you can actually pull the bike down above that 48 degrees and it just holds you at that speed, or you can put it above. So you can actually move the bike up and down and play with that lean angle sensor and see just how acute it is. And it makes you feel like a pro because you can just smash the throttle wide open coming off a corner. But there are so many electronic aids, and no bike that's ever been offered to the public has this level of sensitivity and rider aid ever. The bike makes up for so many lacks of inability, whether it's throttle control, whether it's very heavy on the brake, not being smooth on the brakes. So we've been talking about DTC quite a bit in the lean angle sensor, but the race ABS, I finally had a chance to test it in the wet at Portimao in Portugal, and by about the 10th pulse, and it's such a minuscule pulse, it doesn't even upset the brake lever at all. I realized I've never been that countered up, crossed up at probably about 25-degree lean angle with some forefinger in the brakes coming down into turn one, about 250 kilometers an hour. And it gets to the point where it backs up what I was saying earlier. I was still focused on what was happening in front of me because the bike wasn't giving me the feedback to put a quick reaction into it. And then you start getting a little confident, you start playing with it lap after lap after lap, and it's consistent. It keeps engaging consistently. So yes, the electronics will give a rider a lower margin of error, if you ask me. Well, the DTC is not a wheelie control. What it is, the two wheel sensors sense the speeds are different. Rain mode, if you can wheelie consistently, you can have my paycheck. Sport mode will only let you wheelie a certain degree or amount. Race mode a little bit more, but it lets you drive off the corner, wheelie up onto the front straightaway, but it sets itself down and keeps you going, but not obnoxiously. It just doesn't abruptly kick in and slam the bike down. It's amazing how refined it shortens the ignition. So it's just, but if you want to have the forgiveness of sport mode, but wheelie, you can turn the traction control off. So now you have the throttle response that's nice and smooth and seamless on the initial pickup on the small part of the tire, but you can wheelie all you want. Or you can have DTC on and ABS off. So you can have so many different variables and play with what suits your needs. Character. Has more character than any other Japanese brand that I've ever ridden, or any of the top 5 liter bikes in the world. And after spending 2 weeks in Portugal, Portimao, during the world launch of this new RR, riding with 166 journalists from around the world, I actually got the character reference from 3 Japanese journalists when I asked them, just sum it up for me, what do you think? And knowing that they're going to be a little more biased and culturally loyal to the Japanese brands, to hear it from 3 Japanese journalists that say it has more character than the top 4, or not top 4, but the big 4 Japanese brands. It's such a safe bike to ride hard.